What's up, everyone? We're back for another episode. We took a week break. I know you guys didn't feel that, but that's because Lawrence was on vacation. So, first, wanted to catch up on that and see how things went, what your experience was, and want to hear all about it.
Yeah, vacation. It's been a while since it's been like a true vacation where it was like just for us and just to be able to wind down and just relax and really just soak everything in. So we had a fantastic week. Went down to Amelia Island, Florida, which I'd never been before. I didn't even know it was actually an island. I didn't know if it was just, that's what they called it or whatever, but it's an actual little tiny little island. And it was fantastic. The resort we stayed at was amazing. It was just so laid back, very cool, like small little beach town vibe. And I mean, we basically just did like, you know, no shocker. I had kind of like a routine every day, which I'll go over in a second. But basically, did like coffee shop, beach, pool, and out to dinner, and just really enjoyed and just kind of really soaked in nature and everything. So it was fantastic.
I love those kinds of vacations where you're just chilling, soaking in the sun by the water, just like no set agenda. You're not like rushing around trying to do a bunch of stuff, just chilling.
Yeah, I was talking to another client today about not having our phones on us, and he was doing something where he didn't have his phone on him all day, and that, I don't take my phone down to the beach, so it's like all day, it's like in my room just hanging out, and so it was nice just to get away from that as well, and not even worry about what was going on the other side of the world, just me and the waves and sunshine and soaking it in. So loved it.
Oh yeah, that's the way for sure. Especially because I know you work so hard and just always got a lot going on. So I'm sure it was much needed to just completely unplug and reset and just spend some time with the family too.
Yeah, it was great. And I mentioned my routine. So basically, what I would do is I would get up early and get my workout in, and that's mainly, again, we've talked about this before, but this is mainly just kind of keep that routine going. And I actually like that routine, so it's not like I'm forcing myself, or I enjoy going down there. And if I didn't, or if it wasn't as much fun, I'll just be like, take a week off. That's fine. But I went down there enjoying, just basically went through my workout just in a real light way, and did a couple different random things. And most of the time there was no one in there, and that was it's always fun. Every now and then someone pops in there. Or it's interesting to I like to watch and check out like the different people that are in there and what they do. And one day there was this lady just beating herself up on the elliptical, like, I mean, making noises, and I mean, it's like, and the entire time I was there, she was on the elliptical, and it was just like and I was like, man, just I'm here just relaxing during my workout. And then you get the big guy that comes in there, and he's like, I gotta lift as much as possible because there's people watching. The type of it's fun. But and then I would go, and a lot of times, we also talked about on vacations and trips to kind of keep certain routines and habits, and I always make sure like I have a lot of protein in the morning. I usually have my shake. Either I bring like I usually have this like little handheld mixer, and I love to go walk the beach right after my workout as well. And so what I do is I'd go up, and I decided, what, I'm going to make a little protein coffee. And so I'd make some coffee, mix in a couple scoops of protein, and Legion makes this. I always forget what it is, the exact name, but it's like caramel chocolate cookie butter. I don't know what it is. It's like,
Yeah,
but it's fantastic. And I mixed that in with the coffee, and it was amazing.
I
I mean,
bet.
yeah, it tastes just like a caramel mocha. So I basically made that every single morning, and I just walked the beach. It was so peaceful, just kind of walking by myself and just enjoying. I'd go out there, and I use that time to pray and talk to God and just kind of appreciate the waves crashing around me, and the sunrise, and that was just really peaceful and just an amazing way to start the day. And then go back and get everyone up, and then we'd head out to a coffee shop, which I love finding local coffee shops and exploring them. And Amelia Island just happened to have some amazing ones. We found three different coffee shops, all very unique. One was a Cuban-based place. They had all, I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone that worked there was from Cuba. And the menu was amazing, and everything was just very unique and very Cubanish, And then found another coffee shop that was like, I thought this was a good business plan. It was in the morning, it was a coffee shop, and in the evening, it was a brewery. And they designed it just well enough to where you could kind of have both at different times of the day. So that was really cool, and the coffee and the food there was great. And then we found a coffee shop that was like downtown, which is just, it's a really small little downtown, bunch of little tiny shops. And this place was bustling. Like there's a line out the door every time, and I got a coffee and I get like a mocha, and then they had like the best cinnamon rolls, so I got that a couple times. But so it was really cool. One, finding some great coffee shops, but also just finding some unique ones. And I typically don't go to coffee shops locally as much, just because, I just make everything at home, and so it's kind of like an extra special treat for me when I go out find those coffee shops. So that was a lot of fun too.
That's nice. And I saw you found some shark teeth too. I know we were talking about that on the last episode.
Yeah, I love looking for shark teeth. Yeah, most of them were just those little tiny little shark teeth, but it was a lot of fun. It was really hard looking for them and finding them, but I also sit there like going through the sand and just sit there. People were looking at me and just watching me like, "Hey, you found anything?" I was like, "Not yet. I'm working on it." But that was fun. So um, yeah, and we had just a fantastic trip overall. So we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, so glad to hear that. Sounds beautiful. Sounds like a great routine. And I assume your girls had a great time too.
Oh yeah, everyone had a great time. We had such a fun time. Like I said, it was just super laid back. We went to the beach, enjoyed that all day. We'd go to the pool in the afternoon and had some really good meals. So just overall, just everything was just fantastic.
Love to hear that. Yeah, speaking of small little beach towns, I also went on like a little, just very short little beach getaway for the 4th of July weekend. So like, when you were kind of explaining that what the island vibes are like, it sounds very similar to the one I was on. I was on Anna Maria Island, which is sounds kind of similar, but I feel like has the best beaches, at least in this area that I'm in. So it was super cool waking up on the water there. And I also, it was kind of me touching my dreams too, because I always say my dream is to live on the beach. And so it was just cool getting to experience that for a couple days and just being able to wake up, walk right out to the beach, watch the sunrise, stuff like that. So that was super cool.
I know that is a dream, right? Just to be able to like wake up, like walk out on your deck or patio, and the beach is right there, sunrise, sunset. That's amazing. So did you do anything down there? Like, did you do anything special, or just kind of hung out and relaxed?
Not really. Like I was just doing some work while I was there, just relaxing a little bit, trying to unplug a little bit, and then we ended up driving down the coast like an hour, hour and a half, just kind of checking out some of the beaches, just seeing what's down there. There was some really nice houses and some nice neighborhoods. I love going through and just looking at the beautiful houses, but they were insane. Like, yeah, there's like some $25 million ones. So I'm like, oh, yep, I'll put that on the list one day. But yeah, it was just fun, just exploring, chilling mostly.
I know. I have like a love hate like relationship with those houses because I like to see them like, oh man, those are so awesome. And then I get real jealous. I'm like, God, I wish I had it. Like how
Right.
awesome would that be? But yeah, that's definitely the dream, man, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. There were some that what really got me is there's some basically have their own private beach, and then it was weird, like the road was in the middle of, it's kind of just like an island, or just like a little, basically, yeah, an island. Road was going through the middle, and the whole lot spanned basically both sides of the road. So they had a private beach on one side, and then like a bay on the other side where with like a boat
Okay.
dock and stuff. So it was like really cool setup. I'm like, you get the best of both worlds. So yeah, it was really sick.
That's really cool.
So yeah, one day,
One
maybe.
day, one day.
And then figure we should touch on our client spotlight for the week as well. You want to take it away with that?
Yeah, I do. So client spotlight this week is on Michelle. Whoop whoop. Michelle, when I first met her, she was just like a bundle of joy. Like she was laughing like right away, and we had such a great conversation. I knew it'd be so much fun to work with her. And Michelle, I'm seriously so proud of your journey and just the grit that you've shown, the strength, consistency, personal growth, and just a real deep self awareness. I mean, you really are a rock star, Michelle.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
we talk about this like every week on our meetings too. Like we really are so proud of her.
yeah, we are. I mean, and there's so many wins. That's one thing like I like to celebrate with them, and I want to make sure that she hears these and sees these. So I wrote a few down. So one, just being flexible and just really adapting to different types of schedules. Like she's just living proof that the journey isn't just about having like a perfect 7-day week. And it's about adjusting, and no matter what's going on, just still showing up. A lot of milestones, like we started at a reasonable step goal, like 7,000. The next thing you know, she's at 8,000, and then she's at 9,000, and she's getting 9,500 now, and pretty soon I'm sure she'll be up to 10,000. So she keeps pushing her limits, and she's always up for that challenge. She's lost 25 plus pounds, and incredible progress, and it just shows her discipline and intention. And again, she shows up even when she's tired, even when she's frustrated or traveling, or sometimes just I'm over it, type of thing. Next day she's like, but I'm back at it,
Yeah.
and so I love seeing that. And strength wise, my gosh, like she is getting so strong. Like, in our dashboard, we see these like max volumes that they put in and PRs, and every week there's just more and more of these. And she's lifting heavy weights that she never thought she could ever do. And sometimes she'll tell me what she's lifting, and I'll look in there and I'm like, really? Wow, that's pretty impressive. Like, that's some big weight. So, and we had a phase. The last phase she was in, it was just lower reps and like really heavy, really challenging herself. And she just went to it. She's like, all right, let's do it. Let's try it out. And so just facing new challenges, taking them head on. And then, we've talked about this too. Other than the physical side of things, a lot of mental and emotional wins that she's had. And despite like burnout and frustration, moments of doubt, like she's still showing up. And she's kind of like feeling that ebb and flow of just a real transformation, and not quitting when we kind of get that mental noise, and massive win just in that, in itself, right? And then social confidence. I really see this like quiet confidence emerging from her, and I don't know if she sees it yet, but I can see that in her, and it's just very cool to just kind of watch this develop.
Yeah, literally just infinite wins in every single area of her life. She's seriously been crushing it. And I think what you said about the consistency is so huge. Is there's been days when she hasn't felt like it, just going through stuff, just in her head or just dealing with stuff, and she continues to show up and fight through and just continue to stay consistent in this process. And I feel like that's a big reason why she's had such amazing results all the way around. So yeah, just so amazing. And even with the confidence, so I even like one thing is I think she mentioned she like start to feel confident going to the gym on her own, and just that feeling is so powerful, so it's just amazing to see.
Yeah, it really is. You're a rock star, Michelle.
Yes. And I feel like some of these wins can tie into to our topic of today.
Yeah, I really do. We're going to talk about something that doesn't really show up on any kind of workout tracker, or a lot of people don't talk about this as much. So much of your why we're doing this, right? And I kind of came up with this. Obviously, it's make believe, but this kind of I want to give a story to kind of make it a little more real like, right? And so, and it's kind of funny. I came up with a story and asked my youngest daughter. I said, "Hey, give me two guy names for this made up story." She was Brian and Liam.
And you're like,
Like,
who are they?
yeah, like she was like, I don't know, I just came up with this. It was funny how she just came up with two names. It was like right away, it wasn't like, I don't know. She's just like Brian and Liam. So anyway, this story is about Brian and Liam. So both of them hit the gym like 5 days a week, same routine, similar goals. But what drives them, that's where their stories are different. That's where we split. So let's talk about Brian first. So Brian moves because he wants to, right? He wants to feel good. His workouts are kind of like a reset button. It's a way to say, hey, thanks, body. You're doing a lot for me. He trains hard, but it's not punishment. It's fuel. And Brian wants to be strong. He wants to be energized. He wants to be grounded. He's not chasing perfection, but he's chasing that peace, right? And so when Brian has an off day, he doesn't beat himself up. He rests, he resets, he comes back. Because fitness for him isn't about fixing something broken. It's about taking care of something that he values. All right. And then there's Liam. Liam also works out religiously, but every session starts from that same thought of, hey, you know what, dude, you're still not there. The mirror is his judge. The scale is kind of like his scoreboard. And Liam's workouts aren't about feeling better. They're about trying to make up for what he ate or how he looks or for all the ways he doesn't think he measures up like he should. And when he misses a session, that guilt just eats him up more than the rest helps, right? And so Liam really isn't training for strength. He's punishing himself for something or for not being something else or someone else, right? Same exercises, same routines, but just a completely different mindset. And here's the deal: the intention behind your workout is sometimes even more important than the intensity, right? And so you can deadlift from a place of self-hate, or from a place of self-respect. You can go on a run because you're trying to escape yourself or something else, or you can go on a run because you love the way it makes you feel. Fitness should not be a punishment. It's a way to connect with yourself, a way to celebrate progress, and not shame all of our imperfections, right? So hopefully those stories kind of helped out, and I'm hoping people go to the gym, or they go to their workout and they're looking at it and ask themselves, okay, am I training because I hate the way I look, or because I love myself and I care enough to treat myself better? So hopefully, we're going to talk about this more in detail, but hopefully our reason is rooted in respect. Let it be love, not lack, that drives your discipline.
I freaking love that story so much. I think you nailed that. It paints such a good picture because you can be doing the same things, but the intent and the mindset behind it can be so different. And then it can ultimately lead you to a different outcome. Maybe not be like within a few weeks or a few months, but long term, it's going to take a toll and it's going to change the whole trajectory of your journey. Because bottom line is, you can't hate yourself into a body that you love. And trust me, I tried it for years. And I feel like a lot of us tend to go through that cycle first before we get into, the right way of doing it or shifting that mindset. But yeah, for years, like I had it all wrong. Every workout for me was punishment. I was kind of, like you said in that story, every restricted meal was out of guilt. I trained because I hated who I had become. And it basically led me to a toxic relationship with food, with the gym, with myself. And I see this happen all the time with people as their journey is fueled by self-judgment and trying to fix themselves by pushing harder, but that mindset never leads to long-term success. But I get it too because sometimes change starts from frustration. That's how I started. Like I hated where I was at and I was just so fed up with being miserable and hating how I looked and felt and the person I'd become. And so that was fuel for me to get going. And I think to some extent that is okay if it's just, like getting you started and getting over that initial hump. But like I said, like it needs to shift to getting out of the self-hate and more into the self-love because the real lasting results come from when you shift from that punishment to the self-respect. So you want to train to get stronger, you want to eat well to feel better mentally, physically, you want to move your body because you care about it. And the biggest transformation happens when you stop tearing yourself down and start building yourself up.
Yeah, and we've all been there. We've whether it's just isolated workouts, or I've had workouts where I was upset or frustrated or angry or just sad about something, and I just beat myself up. And at that moment it feels great. You're like, oh man, that was a great workout, but there's no peace to it.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa, when you just have a really great workout because you're there because you love it, and you're there because you're trying to improve yourself and do what's best for you, there's a different piece about it. You just feel so much better, and it's like you talked about the trajectory. It's just such a different mindset, and puts you on such a better path when you're doing it out of like self-love and self-respect. And most people fail in fitness just because they make it miserable. And whether they starve themselves, or they overtrain, or they just cut out everything that they enjoy in life, and then they quit. And they think they need to earn their worth by suffering, as if more miserable they are, the more progress they'll make. And the key really isn't suffering; it's sustainability. And we've talked about it a bunch, right? Can we do this forever and ever? And beating yourself up every day, you can't do that. Fitness isn't a punishment; it's a privilege, right? Like, you get to move your body, you get to become stronger, you get to improve your health. And so hopefully people stop seeing it as a chore, and start seeing it more as an investment in their life. And the goal is not just to push through for a few weeks, or just, kill yourself, hurt yourself, make your life hard. It's about building a lifestyle that you can actually like stick to forever.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. For years, I looked like I had it all together. In theory, I was lean, I was disciplined, I tracked my food, I never missed a workout. On the outside, I was doing everything right, but behind the scenes, I tied my self-worth to my physique. I controlled every gram of food. I would feel anxious if I wasn't perfect and hitting everything exactly how I was supposed to, and just, like I said, was punishing myself, beating myself into the ground with workouts and everything. And I thought discipline meant suffering, and that if I worked harder, I'd finally feel the way that I wanted to. But newsflash, didn't work. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And eventually I hit that breaking point. And so I had to completely shift my mindset into what we're talking about here. And then fitness isn't punishment. It's not about tracking every bite or pushing yourself to exhaustion. It's about feeling strong enough to show up for your life. And I see so many people stuck in that cycle thinking if they aren't all in, then they aren't making progress. But again, that approach never works long term. So if you're tired of chasing perfection and just want something that actually works, there's a better way. And so, I always say fitness should enhance your life, not take it over. And kind of like I was saying earlier, like, don't get me wrong, at first it works, like, it kind of works to like fuel your journey out of hate or punishment. Like that hate was fuel for me. Like I said, I was disgusted with myself, so I pushed harder, I trained longer, I ate less, controlled everything I possibly could. And sure, in the beginning it worked a little bit. It got me moving, it gave me some structure, and it made me feel like I had some control over my life. But that kind of fuel runs out and really quickly. And so if you're relying on self-hate to drive you, it turns into a cycle of extremes and pushing yourself to the edge, burning out, and just repeating that process over and over. And I see so many people like stuck in that yo-yo cycle because they're going through that same cycle, and they go all in because they hate what they see in the mirror. They starve themselves, punish themselves, do the brutal workouts, and then force their way through it. Um, and while that might get you the initial results, that's not what's going to keep you going. And so at some point, the real lasting change, like we need to get that through shifting your mindset. And you need to go from seeing the gym as a form of punishment to seeing it as a form of self respect. And so we kind of came up with a few key shifts to help people turn fitness from punishment into a lifestyle.
Yeah, so if you've been stuck in that cycle that you mentioned, starting over again, we want to break down. We're going to talk about why punishment never works long term. The mindset shift that actually does lead to change, and then how to build that fitness routine that's rooted in self-respect, self-love, and not shame. All right, so let's talk about first thing we want to talk about is the problem with self-hate as fuel. So a lot of people, I think, would relate to that. Even if they don't realize it or they don't think about it, they come into the gym again. They're like, I hate what I see in the mirror. I need to burn off what I ate last night or drank last night, or, I'm disgusting for letting myself get there. And it becomes this cycle of punishment instead of a cycle of progress.
Mm-hmm. And that mindset makes everything harder. You end up relying on discipline alone, which leads to burnout. And if the only reason you're showing up is because you hate yourself or your body, you're always going to resent the process. And so eventually, like you said, you're going to quit, you're going to burn out. I'm curious too for you, have you ever gone through a cycle like where you were in that mentality, or what's your experience like with that?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times where externally, or external circumstances kind of fuel that, right? And I don't know if it's so much out of like self-hate, more so for me, it was like like lack of confidence, or I'd look in the mirror and be like, like I just don't look very good, or I don't look like the way I want to, or I'm not attracting the right, women, when I was younger, that type of thing, because of my body or because of what. And so it is like I have to go into the gym to do whatever I can because to change myself and to make myself a different person. And so and I guess, I mean, in a way, yeah, I guess it is kind of like a self-hate type of thing, a self-dislike of the way you feel about yourself, or another way to think about it is the way you view yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even now, like, I mean, this summer we've talked about, I feel like I'm one of maybe the leanest that I've ever been. And there's still times where I look in the mirror, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't think I'm as lean as I was yesterday, or like, no one's complimented me. It's like, maybe I'm not, maybe I'm just making, like there's this self doubt that just creeps in. It goes back to those like insecurities. And I think a lot of people assume that, the Instagram or the social media models and the people at the gym that look the best, that they've got it all together. And a lot of times we're the ones that have the most insecurities, and we've just kind of used the gym to help soothe that. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I've worked out in different times because of that, self hate to fuel me, or self lack of confidence to fuel me, things like that.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great perspective too, because I think that's what a lot of people experience more on a day to day, week to week basis. Like I think there is that initial, like when you're getting started, kind of like I was experiencing, but it doesn't need to be like that deep like hatred. Oh, I hate everything. Like it can just be that subtle stuff of just like not feeling enough and going in and punish yourself because of that, or just not feeling like you're seeing the progress you want and going in and trying to punish yourself or restrict yourself. So I think that that is very applicable to a lot of people's day to day. And like you said, we all go through that. I still experiencing those moments too, or those periods where we go through that. And I think to some extent that's something that never goes away, but it's just like being able to catch yourself on that too.
Well, and we've talked about how disciplined we are, with our workouts and our nutrition stuff like that. But there can also be an evil side of that where we're so disciplined that like we can't let it go,
Hmm.
and we're like, oh, well, we can't have a day off or we can't have a couple of days off because I need to make sure I get that workout in, or I need to make sure that I'm eating my protein or whatever it may be. And so sometimes it's the opposite of someone who's just not doing their routines and their habits. We're just doing it too much. We're too strict with it, and we're making life too restrictive in terms of we have to do it this way. Not,
Hmm.
I guess what I want to say is we're not as flexible as we should be sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, and I've talked about that a lot for sure. That's definitely something I struggle with. I know you're kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, and I feel like I've gotten better as I've gotten older. I mean, I think I've mentioned this before. I remember sitting in meetings when different jobs where it was getting late and I didn't get my workout, and I was so angry, and I'm sure I was worthless the rest of the meeting because all I could think about is I can't believe that I'm having to stay here late. I'm missing my workout. I'm not gonna be able to get it, instead of be like, it's one workout, dude. It's not a big deal type of thing.
That's funny you say that. Actually, like that's what's something going through my mind today because it's been like super crazy week. Like I called all day today, but like I wasn't able to get in my workout that I wanted to, and so that's in the back of my mind too. I'm like, oh man, but I'm like, all right, one day is okay. It's just a recovery day anyway. Like it's fine. So it's funny that you say that.
So we go through those mental battles as well.
Hmm. And I think a big key, like a big action step to help with that is just becoming aware of your language too and the way you're speaking to yourself. The check we always use, and I think one that is very common that I'm sure everyone's heard a lot, but it really works is like, would I speak to a friend or someone I care about the same way I'm speaking to myself right now?
Yeah.
Not, it's a good idea to rewrite that script and the way that you're talking to yourself there.
Yeah, I love that. And I also heard one time is, you know, would you talk to yourself, as a kid? Like if you
Mm.
saw a kid version of you, would you talk to that person like that? And of course you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that one too. So yeah, then so next thing we want to talk about was just what actually creates the lasting change. And I think that real transformation comes from respect, not restriction, like we were talking about, more from care, not control. And it is a hard shift to make at first because most of us were taught that the harsher we are with ourselves, the faster we'll change. But again, the long term results don't come from the extremes, they come from consistency. And consistency comes from enjoying the process, not dreading it.
yeah, when I played baseball, I was so hard on myself, and I thought a way to get better was to just like completely destroy myself mentally, like if I didn't do well, and it obviously did not work well. Probably the biggest detriment to my future in baseball was the mental side of things, and if I just didn't perform, I would just completely destroy myself, and I would just baseball is such a mental game that I was just I really ruined myself in that way. So yeah. So let's make this super practical, right? So what does self-respect look like in action? So think about this. Let's say you're like, okay, oh my gosh, I had a pizza last night, right? And that's so. Little side note, I can't resist pizza. Like if you put it in front of me, I can't have like one slice, especially if I have anything available. And so the first night we were at the resort, they had like a little pop-up outdoor pizza kitchen.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, we got to eat there, because the guy that checked me in was like, it's fantastic. And they weren't huge pizzas, and so I always, never fails, I always over order pizza. I can never get it right. I always order way too much. And so I had like, I think 4 or 5 different types of pizzas. And I was like, I think we should order like 2 of each. and
Of
everyone's
course.
like, I don't know if we can eat that much. I was like, oh, they're small. It will be good. And even the lady that was like ringing me up, she's like, you want 2 of each of them? And I was like, yes. And so we ended up getting like 2 of all mixed up for one, which is kind of a unique flavor. But and they all come out and they smell delicious. And we sit and we had this little table we're sitting at. And I put them all down, and I just had to keep going back and getting them, and it just completely filled the table. And I looked at it, I was like, whoa, this is way too much pizza. Um, and it was fantastic. Everyone enjoyed it, but I mean, I probably ate like two or three pizzas, like large pizzas worth. I just couldn't stop eating. I mean, it was so good, and like I just can't. It was so good, but I can't stop. It's just something about that. So, it's easy to look at that the next day and be like, wow, I need to work that off. I need to work that pizza off because that was ridiculous how much I ate. So instead, we need to have that mindset of that's in the past. That was last night. Whatever. I'm trying to get stronger. I'm not trying to work anything off. I'm trying to get stronger. And whatever I did in the past, I'm working on getting stronger. I screwed up, so now I have to restrict. That's another way, going back to that pizza example too. The next day I could have been like, I'm not eating anything or whatever. But sure enough, I had this like half-pound burger and fries at lunch. It's like, so, you got to look at it like one meal is not going to define my progress. A couple meals here or there that are not, dialed in are not going to mess up my progress. And then also like sometimes people have that mindset of like, I have to earn the rest. I have to get to the point where I'm so locked in, so dialed, I feel so great that then I can take a day off, right? But in reality, that rest is recovery. And that is such a big part of the growth, whether it's between sets or taking a day or two off, during the week. I mean, we have to have that rest. Our body needs that to recover. So, your actions might look the same, but it's the intention that really changes everything.
Yeah, and so there's a few shifts too that changed a lot for me and that we work with our clients as well. I think one is finding a deeper why. So your goal isn't just about fat loss. Ask yourself, who do you want to feel like 6 months from now? Who am I becoming? We want to dig deeper and find the deep driving force behind that so that way we can tie our actions to energy, confidence, longevity, something that actually matters to you. And so if you guys haven't reflected on your goals and your why in a while, like this is very important. Just really sit down, journal this out, even just writing down top 3 reasons why you're wanting to change that don't have anything to do with weight if that's your goal. And just like really get deep on this. Like, why is this important to you? Why does this matter?
Yeah, like you said, write it down and you're like, okay, so I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, great. That's great. But why do you want to lose 20 pounds? And even going deeper than that. Okay, well, I want to lose 20 pounds because, I don't love the way I look. Okay, well, why don't you love the way you look? And
Mhm.
just kind of deep down, and usually you get about 5 or 6. Then you really hit that deep goal and you're like,
There it
there's
is.
my real why. Yeah.
Yep. That's so good.
But that's hard to do too, because you have to take some time to reflect. And sometimes, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I know I've done it. You don't really want to reflect that deeply.
Hmm.
It's easier just to kind of stay on that surface level.
Yeah, you got to get real with yourself. And some of that stuff is like painful to get into and it's uncomfortable and you're stepping into new versions of yourself and things that you haven't really reflected on before. So it can be uncomfortable, but that's what leads to the most growth.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing we talk about a lot too with our clients is stop chasing perfection. What we're looking for is progress, right? So, most people fail not because they're lazy or any other reason, but it's just because they expect everything to be perfect and everything to go exactly the way they kind of build up in their mind. We're great storytellers, for a good reason or bad reason. Sometimes we, make up all these stories that are, negative thoughts that aren't really true. But then on the other side, sometimes we make up this like perfect vision of how everything should be, and they're like, that's not reality. You're not going to lose 10 pounds in a week and you'll be jacked up in 2 weeks and everything. So, again, one missed workout often turns into, well, I'll just start next week. In reality, one missed workout is not a big deal at all. Or one off plan meal is like, well, you know what, I screwed up this meal, so I'm just gonna eat whatever I need, what I want this week. I already ruined it. So again, reframe it. My goal is to show up consistently, and that's the key. Not perfectly, but just consistently, right? And so, and one thing too, I think that it gets lost in that conversation of being consistent is being patient. It takes a lot of patience to be consistent because you are not going to see a lot of results right away. And there are going to be some peaks and valleys. Even if you do see some good results right away, you're going to eventually hit a plateau and you might even go backwards a little bit. But that's just part of life. And so you have to have that patience just to keep going, be consistent, knowing that not every day is going to be perfect. And again, your goal is to show up consistently, not perfectly. All right, and then we kind of mentioned this too, but train because you respect your body, right? You don't have to love every part of yourself. I think every single one of us could probably point out at least one thing that we don't love about our body, but we need to treat it with respect. Start training with the goal of not becoming, or let's start training with the goal of becoming stronger, right? Not I need to lose weight. I'm training because I need to lose weight. I want to train because I want to get stronger, right? I want to build some muscle, right? Which will eventually lead to weight loss, but fuel your body because you want energy. Again, not because you're punching it. So next time you train, focus on what your body can do and not just how it looks. Track your strength, track your endurance, track how you felt afterwards, the energy you had and the feeling that you had afterwards. And that's going to build momentum from a really good positive place. And that's what's really going to stick.
Hmm. Yeah, I think implementing a lot of these tips and shifts will help. And a lot of it too is just practice and repetitions with catching yourself on these narratives and realizing, like, oh, there I am punishing myself again, or oh, there I am wanting to restrict myself again. So a lot of it is just being able to, one, catch yourself in the act, and then be able to reframe that, at least the story you're telling yourself, and then go and implement the right habits going forward. Because again, they're always going to pop up, but the more you catch it, the more you become aware of it, like the less and less they will pop up, and the easier it will be to shift and like get into this right mentality of respecting your body, and doing it from a place of love and growth as opposed to punishment and restriction. So if you're stuck in that guilt and shame cycle, basically just as always, like, we want to focus on some of the basics. Typically train 2, 3 times a week with just the intention of getting stronger. Prioritize sleep, recovery, not just the output that you're putting. Eat, some good quality high protein meals a day with whole foods. You don't need to go to extremes. You don't need to cut out any major food groups or macros or anything like that. I also recommend adding in one sort of mindset habit: journaling, prayer, just stillness. Again, this helps you be in tune and be able to catch yourself when you're in these narratives or in these negative cycles, and just ultimately speak to yourself like you're someone worth taking care of. We don't need 75 hard. We don't need to track every macro. We don't need to fix everything overnight. We just need to take care of ourselves like someone you actually want to succeed.
Yeah, so well said.
So yeah, basically, we can't build a body you love by constantly tearing yourself down. I think the real transformation starts when you train like you respect yourself, when you show up with care, not control, and when you can simplify the process and stop trying to suffer your way to success. So if this hit home for you, we'd love to help you build something that actually fits your life. So feel free to come join us in our private school community. I'll give you the exact tools and support to do it right, and I'll link that in the show notes. And overall, we appreciate you guys listening, and we will catch you next week.